This week, the chapter number 12, is focusing on inequality in education. This is something all of you are very familiar with. You have all participated in the school system at some point in your life, and you're currently in the college setting. So we're going to take a deeper dive into looking at how our education system here in the United States creates and perpetuates inequality amongst students. So I'm reading from the box on page 339, the blue box. It starts out with a discussion about Head Start, wondering, does it work? Are these investments in preschool education, does it pay off? Well, research shows that Head Start programs produce positive benefits to underprivileged children, improvements in intelligence tests, general ability tests, and learning readiness. Education serves many functions in modern society, including the promotion of a common identity amongst all members of society due to educational inequality amongst minority groups. The achievement of this integrative function have been slowed down in the United States. Although Head Start has helped in this regard, barriers in the educational system remain. Before turning to the issue of educational inequality, however, some other topics require coverage, beginning with the development and the structure of American educational institutions. So, before we start pulling apart our education system, we first need to learn a little bit of the history and how we got to where we are today. So, we didn't always have a school system as we do now. Children, if you think about like Little House on the Prairie, started going to school. It was more like one-room schoolhouse. But as we moved towards industrialization, so our school system changed. We then had a fully developed public school system where children were separated by age, and we had a formal education system. So I'm going to read to you again from page 339. It says, between 1850 and 1910, the teaching of democratic values and marketable skills became especially popular in urban areas inundated by many ethnic groups who immigrated to the United States. During this period, most proponents of public education believed the objective of early school to be not so much intellectual culture as the regulation of the feelings, dispositions, and extirpation of vicious propensities, the preoccupation of the wilderness of the young heart, or wilderness of the young heart, with seeds of germs of moral beauty, and the formation of a lovely and virtuous character by the habitual practice of cleanliness, decency, refinement, good temper, gentleness, kindness, justice, and truth. Thus, public schooling in the 19th century America was not designed primarily to teach sophisticated intellectual skills. It was a mechanism of social control. Otherwise, children would grow up to be vicious, or the wilderness of the young heart would lack seeds of moral beauty. So, our educational system is founded on the basis of not learning ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but learning how to be a successful participant in society. So, since it first started out as teaching more the basics, so that way children became more sophisticated and less wild, it also became a tool of teaching kids the skills that they would need to survive in society. Also, as the trends of labor have changed, so do the demands of school and work. So the focus of what is learned in the school system shifts as the demand in our workforce changes, as the demand in what skills are needed to be successful in our society. So to first break it apart, there are different ways that we can run schools. There's a bureaucratic model, an open classroom model, cooperative learning experiences, and an integrative curriculum. Basically, the different types of schools are just trying to achieve at better performance and better outcomes for the students and society. So the bureaucratic model is trying to be efficient and specialized staff. So the bureaucratic model is what most often people observe when you think of a traditional school. The school system is broken up into administrators who take care of things such as bookwork, running the schools. The teachers, they are usually specialized in either a grade or they may have an endorsement to do reading or math or science. You have custodians that clean the school. It's very efficient. People can specialize in certain areas. So you'll have a librarian that takes care of those things. So that is the bureaucratic model. That is what we most know. Okay. But there are other options, such as an open classroom, where it's more flexible and it's non-competitive. Um, the open classroom is a non-bureaucratic approach which focuses on democratic relationships, flexibility, and non-competitiveness. It eliminates the line between teachers and students. There is a standardized curriculum for all children of a certain age, and grouping of children based upon ability and encouraged competition. It's kind of remember when you may not have heard of this, but at one point there was a back to the basics movement. These different types of classrooms spontaneously kind of arise when we realize there's an issue with the way that we're doing things. Another option is a cooperative learning, which is non-bureaucratic as well, in which students study in groups with teachers acting as guides rather than controlling agents. Students will learn more if they interact with others in the classroom. They have found that they have increased student performance and participation. Students' attitudes are more positive, and their self-esteem increases. I think of my own kids' school as being a blend between bureaucratic and cooperative, whereas they kind of have an open classroom style where they don't sit in rows, they have flexible seating, and teachers and students take the lead at different times in learning. And the last is the integrative curriculum. This is where students and teachers are both active participants in the design of the curriculum. So our former examples that we talked about, bureaucratic, open classroom, and cooperative, they have a set curriculum that is devised not only by the school teacher, but usually the school board system and even the state mandates what the curriculum is. Integrative curriculum, it's where students and teachers work together to create the curriculum and they decide what is learned in the classroom and how and what the outcomes are going to be. So these are just different forms of public education and how the school system can be. But there are some different challenges to traditional school systems. So you think of those other examples that I shared with you are happening in a regular public school system. Well, these are some challenges to traditional school systems. So normally what happens is you have the state, and the state gives money to public schools, and then the public schools operate with those funds, okay? Well, the challenge to those traditional formats are these other things that we're getting ready to talk about. And it's more about something called school choice. When schools are performing badly, it's the idea that parents and students should have the choice or the ability to select the school that works best for them. A great example we have here in our area is the St. Louis public school system. It had been failing for a long time. And when that happened, some of these other options popped up. Voucher systems, charter schools, magnet schools, for-profit schools, and another option is homeschooling. So what is a voucher system? So each public school district gets money for each of its students. It's a set amount that you get. It's based upon your tax dollars, your property tax dollars, that you get this amount of money for each student. Well, the voucher system is that the government should make that money that's given to each school district available for families to use in private or parochial schools. So the money that your public schools should be getting for your child to go to school there would be given in a voucher to the student or the family, and you could make your choice of where you wanted to go to school. So you could choose a private school or a not-for-profit school or a parochial school in order to send your child if the public school isn't working. So these can be very problematic because, again, these other options, parochial schools or private schools, are very expensive. So what do you do when the voucher that you have isn't enough to cover your tuition at the private or parochial school? Again, that's creating another problem because it makes it more accessible for families that have more money. They are able to have more options and more choices of where they can go to. The other next option are charter schools. These are publicly funded schools that operate like private schools. They're led by public school teachers and administrators, and they use non-traditional teaching methods and devise their own curriculum. So they operate like private schools, but they are publicly funded, which means they don't have to adhere to the curriculum requirements as a regular public school. The next one we're going to talk about is magnet schools. These are public schools that specialize in a particular area, and they try to achieve excellence in that area. So they're similar to public schools, except they specialize in a certain thing. I had a niece that her husband worked at a magnet school, but his was for the performing arts. So it was a regular, like a regular public school, except the students all excelled in one area, whether it was dancing or instruments or vocal. And so that's what the focus of the school was. They spent most of their time working on those performing arts, but then they got the rest of their schoolwork done. For-profit schools. These are schools that use market forces to improve public schools. They are supported by government funds but are run by private, profit-seeking companies. They say the marketplace forces will ensure that the best schools survive. So there are schools that are getting money to run them, or they're making money off of the tuition that they're charging, and they're creating a profit. And then the last one, which is common in our area, is homeschooling. This is where children are taught by parents. Parents say that they are motivated to include usually moral or religious instruction. Usually, sometimes the reasons for homeschooling is the parents want to teach religion or their values and they don't feel like the public schools are doing that for them. Also, some families make the choice for homeschooling if they're concerned about the schooling that their child is going to, whether there's problems with safety, drugs, peer pressure, issues with administration, they're not happy with the academic instruction they're receiving, or if they have children with special needs.